Speaker.
Claire Curran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I think that all of the people listening to Parliament this afternoon, particularly if they come from Otago and Southland, certainly do not believe and will feel insulted to have heard the member who just spoke get up and say that the local MPs who are sticking up for them and for their region are spouting hollow rhetoric, because that is our job and that is what we are elected to do. And I'd remind any of the MPs from Otago and Southland that that is what they're elected to do, is to stick up for their constituents and to stick up for the important for making sure that they've got a proper and adequate health service in our region. That's what they should be doing, instead of getting up and spouting the out-of-touch and hollow rhetoric of their own across that side. Mr. Speaker, we have reasons for supporting this bill, and I will repeat that it does gall me to support it, because it is a bill that removes democracy from our DHB elections for a period of time, and that's a really difficult thing to support. But we are in a serious, we have a serious situation for our health services in the southern area, and it has to be addressed. And that's why we're supporting it, because of the pressure that followed the amalgamation of the two district health boards and the lack of work that went in to, at that time, under this government, to establishing what were the financial implications of that, the ongoing deficit issues that they've had that have been unable to be fixed and instead have got worse, the appointment of a Crown Monitor, which has been almost the entire period that this national government has been in power. They've had a Crown Monitor on that board and they weren't able to fix it. These problems have got worse. The issues led to a lack of confidence by the people in Otago and Southland in the DHB, and then led to the minister's lack of confidence in the DHB. Ultimately, the call and the issues lay with the minister. He did take action finally after being urged to do so by Annette King, our spokesperson. But, Mr. Speaker, we have to support this bill, much as it galls us to do so, because if the commissioners that have been put in there are to do their job, then they have to be given the time to do their job. And the minister ultimately is accountable and becomes much more visibly accountable, and that's what this bill does. However, alongside that goes a set of responsibilities and accountabilities to the minister and those commissioners, that there has to be a plan, that the community can accept the plan, and then that the plan is implemented, and that has to be done within the time period that's been set down for this bill, which is 2019, for the next round of elections. And our concern, one of our concerns, is that it may get pushed out again, and we cannot support that, Mr. Speaker, because that's why the only reason we are supporting this bill is that it does set a time limit. We utterly understand the concerns that some in the community have about the loss of democracy. The Labour Party fought very strongly to have democratic elections return to Environment Canterbury. In the Parliament, when a DHB has been dismissed and a commissioner appointed, in previous parliaments when Labour has been in power, we have reinstated democracy as soon as possible. That's why Annette King put up a supplementary order paper during the committee stage to try and ensure that democracy could be returned as quickly as possible by trying to insert the word postpone rather than cancel the elections, so that there could be potentially democracy restored before 2019, because it may be that that is the case. Unfortunately, that did not get the support of the government. We are supporting this bill, Mr. Speaker, but that's where it ends. We need a plan in the southern DHB region. We need that plan to be expressed. At the moment, as my colleague David Clark said, we've got something that looks like a Christmas card, which is really just a bunch of platitudes. And we need a financial plan. We need a plan for the new build of the hospital, of the clinical services building. We need to know what the management structure is going to be. We need to know the situation for the tertiary level status of our DHB as a teaching hospital. We need a commitment to increased reporting, and we need that to be publicly increased reporting, and that needs to be real reporting and not just platitudes. We need timelines, and we need them now, because right now, Mr. Speaker, we're not getting them. We're getting very vague statements. We're getting things that are being told to us that are then getting pushed out. I have been recently told by the Commissioner, Cathy Grant, that the business case for the new build of the clinical service building is now not due until mid-next year. Well, earlier this year, it was going to be the end of this year, so now it's another 6 months that's been pushed out. Well, what does that tell us about what lies ahead? So there are concerns, and the MPs on this side of the House, who represent their electorates well and represent our region, we will be speaking out, we will be making demands. I read the member Todd Barclay's speech in the committee stage, and there's two things in particular he said that really concerned me. He said that this was a long-term piece of work with a long-term goal. Well, that rings warning bells for me, because that is sort of like acknowledging that it might take longer than 2019, that we need commissioners. Well, on this side of the House, we won't be supporting that. The other thing that concerned me is Mr. Barclay's insistence, ill-informed insistence, because clearly he doesn't speak to many of his constituents in his work, where he says that the DHB, the Southern DHB, is not underfunded. He himself admits that a DHB that services 290,000 people across an area the size of Belgium is a very difficult thing to do, and the population-based funding model is not fit for purpose in our region. And when is he going to acknowledge that? And when are the other National Party MPs that represent our region going to acknowledge that?
I'm just going to ring the bell, but I'm going to ask the member for the last 2 minutes to come back to the bill.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the bill is about removing democracy from our region and giving the commissioners a job to do in a limited period of time that requires a plan. And part of the issue is a financial sustainability plan. And if they cannot acknowledge, the commissioners cannot acknowledge, if the National Party MPs cannot acknowledge that one of the core issues that underpins the situation that our DHB is in is the population-based funding model is not fit for purpose for our region, then we cannot have a financially sustainable plan that will actually get us out of this hole. And that is what we need through this process, is for that acknowledgement to be taken place. I do want to express some concerns about the tasks that lie ahead. The commissioners have had almost 1 year. They've got 3 years more. They're being vague. They've spent $240,000 on a listening plan. Well, they need to start taking some actions and putting some plans out there for the community to see. We need to see that they can manage contracts appropriately, such as the contract with Compass, for which is providing the hospital food, which is so controversial in our region, and where there are so many question marks around how that contract was drawn out, where there are still no KPIs, even though that contract is now in place, and where we have questions about the level of governance around the management of that contract. There are so many questions. We have to keep monitoring this situation.
Jackie Dean.
In June